So welcome for this meeting today. Today we are going to listen. I'm not going to talk. We are going to listen from Winna. Winna is going to talk to us about personal career goals and the approach that you can use for that. This meeting is being recorded. It's going to be available in around 1 week in the London Java Community YouTube channel. I'm going to share the link here in the chat. And I think that's all announcements for today. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I hope that we all are going to enjoy very much this meeting. And Winna, I'm going to open the stage for you. You can start sharing if you're ready, and then you can introduce yourself.
Great. Thanks, Andrea. So, hello, everyone. As Andrea said, today I would like to talk about career development and goal setting. So first things first, hi, I'm Winna. I'm an engineering manager in London. And what I want to talk about specifically is my why for getting to a place where I think of goals as helpful, how to come up with goals, and then how to break those goals down into smaller parts, the importance of support and a support network as you're working on goals, and finally, my why for this approach as opposed to others. So my why is a bit of a storied journey. So I'll walk you through how I got to where I am today. I initially started in the tech industry doing a boot camp and then going to a startup and then a consultancy. Then I joined Pivotal, and I have been at Pivotal for 5.5 years. So some significant things happened over those 5.5 years. And when I first started and my manager spoke to me about what's my vision for the future, I really had no idea and wasn't super interested because I felt like I was just trying to find my feet in the industry. But fast forward a couple of years and my partner and I decided, you know what, it's time to start planning for a family. And for 2 years, we were trying, and then I was pregnant. And then finally, in October of 2017, we had our first child, Karuna. And if any of you has been pregnant or you have partners who have been pregnant, you'll probably know how tiring pregnancy can be. Just before I had Karuna, I actually got a new role at Pivotal as an engineering manager. I applied when I was 8 months pregnant, didn't want to, didn't think I would get it. But in the end, I did get it, which was exciting. But also, I returned to work after maternity leave as a manager in this new role in July of the next year. So I was juggling being a first-time mom, figuring out how to work as a mom, and also understanding a brand new role. Then as things stabilized, of course, I decide, you know what, let's just add something else interesting to the mix and have another baby. And our second baby girl, Shafali, was born in January of last year. Many of you will recognize the next few points as they are familiar to the whole world. But in the journey of raising the second child, there was a pandemic in February, lockdown in March. So I was at home with our 3-year-old, the 2-3-month-old, my husband teaching distance learning to his students in quite a small space, and I was quite tired. Then while I was on maternity leave, Pivotal was acquired by a company called VMware, and that acquisition happened in April. So I had the perspective of being completely out of the day-to-day work life and watching it happen sort of from afar. Then I finished my maternity leave and came back to VMware in November. And I came back to another new role. I was still a manager, but at Pivotal, we did matrix management. But at VMware, I was a line manager, which meant not only did I need to coach, counsel, and advocate for my reports, who might be on many different teams, I became a line manager where I was also responsible for team execution and project execution. And those other aspects of the role were something new for me to juggle and manage. That meant that I started working with a new management and leadership chain. And they are all based in California. And that's an 8-hour time difference for speaking to anyone in leadership and collaborating as a manager cohort. Also speaking with the other core teams that we needed to collaborate with has become quite a challenge. In January, I decided to add something else to the mix and signed up under the advisement of a friend for the Oxford Women's Leadership Program. And that was 6 weeks, 12 hours outside of work. And it was great, but intense. Also, I signed up for a business coaching workshop at work. It was a 2-day session and really just introducing some frameworks. Then I took those two things and I created a workshop for my reports to think about goal setting, because I knew that goals were an important component of progression at VMware in a way they weren't as much at Pivotal. So I wanted to give people the skills to figure out how to define goals and make progress on them. And then I hit a wall. I felt tired. I felt wrung out. I felt like there was no way I could succeed as a mom and as a manager. I felt defeated, and I knew I needed to make a change. And so I decided to step back and realized that I have the tools to help me make a change. And I have the workshop that will help me unpack everything that I'm dealing with. So the leadership course gave me perspective on my past and those accomplishments and accepting myself as a leader. The course also gave me a chance to reflect on my future. And the coaching workshop gave me some useful frameworks to think about goal setting and break things down. I put all of that together to run it for my reports, and life pushed me to step back and try running it on myself. So I decided to run the workshop on me, and the process that I'm going to describe has my example as I went through. So the details of the actual workshop are: the aim is to get goals that feel like you, not that feel like goals for the business or for your role. And the process is a few steps and some cycles. So you first start with reflecting on your past. Then you imagine your future. Then you define your current context, where you are right now. From that, you tie those together and create a goal. You take that wide goal and you scale it. And from scaling the goal, you're going to get options. And with those options, you will cyclically choose an option, finish it, choose the next option, finish it. And once you finish the options for your goal, you consider it done, and you consider creating a new one. So thinking about each of the steps in that process, I'll walk you through the questions you can ask yourself and the ways you can approach each. So the first step is reflecting on your past. When you're reflecting on your past in the context of goal setting, then you want to think about some questions that might help inform things. Questions like, in your past, did you pivot at any point, dramatically or in a small scale, and why? And what does that say? Who shaped who you are personally and professionally? What roles were they in? What was your path to get to where you are right now? And what does it tell you? Did you study in university? Did you take a different path? Have you done a little bit of both? If so, what insights can you draw there? And what was your previous job, or what were your previous jobs focused on? So again, following the example of me, apologies. For my past, I reflected, and at a really high level, a lot of times these conversations with my reports can take upwards of 2 hours, and they're very interesting. But at a very high level, for me, my past was about journalism and print design and graphic design at a young age. And then at university, changing my major a few times and then deciding, no, I'm going to define my own, and petitioning to a department to accept it. Then I finished university and wanted a break. So I taught kids across the country every week, a new city, a 4-day leadership workshop. Then I loved traveling enough that I saved up some money and did the classic early 20s thing and went to Europe, went to India, and landed in South America, where I designed so that I could afford to design and waitress so that I could afford to learn Spanish and live there for 6 months. I came back and decided that I needed to face reality, took a design job that morphed into a few other opportunities. I saw some things in information architecture and user experience that I was intrigued by, and pitched different positions to the company, and ended up working in a lot of different contexts, which was a lot of fun. And then I came to London, and after about a year, I did the boot camp and transitioned into engineering. And the first few roles were more short-lived, but this role with Pivotal and VMware, as I mentioned, I've been with for 5.5 years. And within that context, I've gone from a consulting engineer to an R&D engineer, and finally to the 2 different kinds of people management. So thinking about that, I guess the observations I could draw, just my interest in finding new challenges, my interest in solving problems, not always in the most traditional way, a heavy interest in sort of what people like, how people act, and solving problems. So I go from my past to imagining my future. And again, questions are really great to start to tease out what this story could look like. So for the future, some questions to consider could be, where do you want to be in 5 years? And I know you've probably heard this question 100 times, but it is a pretty standard, useful tool for getting you to think about things if you're up for it. But you can also think about who around you or that you've seen in a wider context has the job that you want. Can you talk to them? Can you find out more about their role? Another interesting one is, if you were financially independent, how would you spend your time compared to what you're doing now? And what does that say in terms of what kinds of roles you're looking for? What job do you want to ultimately retire from? And what do you want people saying at your retirement party about you? So again, for me, as an example, I see myself in 5 years as a director of engineering, or perhaps a head of people somewhere. I think about financial independence and what that would mean. I would love to do more traveling and helping organizations that I care about, or teaching what I enjoy for free. At retirement, I see myself being in people leadership, organizational design, anything where I'm thinking about wide domains. And at my retirement party, I'm hoping people say, she helped shape who I am, she stayed when it was tough, and she found joy in small things, which I have to work on all of those. So after you've imagined your future and you have some answers there, even if it's fuzzy and tentative, you can keep going and figure out where you are right now. And a tool that I learned in the coaching workshop is something called context zones. And it's a way to map your context into some useful categories. So your context zones are 3 different zones. There's the comfort zone, the stretch zone, and the panic zone. The comfort zone is all about autopilot. It's familiar, there aren't surprises, you feel confident and competent in what you're doing. The stretch zone is more about learning and relearning. You're in the sort of mindset to take a risk, to experiment. And in doing so, you're stretching your abilities, you're willing to make changes, and you're developing skills. Finally, in the panic zone, you're so far past learning that you can't even see it anymore. You're just managing anxiety and stress, and you don't have energy left over to help you grow your skills. So, in my context, I'll run you through how I'm feeling right now. In my comfort zone at work, I see myself really comfortable with having one-on-ones with really anyone, speaking up in meetings, coaching, giving feedback, facilitating when I know the people, asking questions to understand, even if I look a little bit silly, thinking creatively across domains, and reasoning through allocations and advocating for my teams. In the risk zone, which is more about where I can grow, even if I've made some progress, I have things like understanding truly how I work best to set up the business and myself for a most successful relationship. Talking to groups of strangers, presenting, long-term strategic planning, allocations within the context of finances and how all of it's affected. Really finances, just full stop. And asking for time or support to upper management, not getting intimidated. In my panic zone, because I am me, there are a number of things. When I run these with reports, sometimes people will have one or two. In my case, I have a number of them. And they include things like disappointing or alienating my team, not being able to find another job at a company where the culture fits, not getting past the manager role, weighing in with partial knowledge and looking like a fool, crashing because my mental health plummets, and failing as a parent and as a manager because I can't balance home and work. The thing to realize about context zones is that there's movement. So in your comfort zone, it's a good place to be. You want to keep those things comfortable, keep doing them. They will bring you support. They will make you feel good. But you might start getting a little bit bored. So keep doing them, but also get yourself into the risk zone with certain things. And the risk zone is a great place to be in terms of growth. And what you want to do is practice those risk zone challenges more and more so that they become part of your comfort zone. You want them to transition. But the panic zone is something that you want to get out of as soon as you can. You want it to stop because you want to have energy, not only to learn, but also just to enjoy life. And part of that is asking for support, whether it's at work or at home. Asking people and telling people what you're struggling with is very important. The other part of it is coming to terms with the things that are out of your control, whether that's at a global scale, like a pandemic, or at a smaller scale, like my team's perception of whether or not I've disappointed them. So once you've defined your context zones, you're ready to pull pieces together to actually create your goal. And the formula for that's fairly straightforward. You think about the things that are in your stretch zone, and you think about that definition of the future that you came up with, and you put them together to figure out what you want to focus on now. So for me, I have my stretch zone, which includes a lot of like talking to people, presenting, finances, not being intimidated. And my future is, being a director, being ahead of something, having time to travel, wanting to be in leadership, and really wanting to have an impact on people's lives. So putting those together, the goal that I came up with that I feel like I have capacity for right now is within a work context, I want to become a recognized name in my organization within VMware. So now that I've got my goal defined, there's really no way that I can tell my manager or tell a friend, help me achieve this goal to become a recognized name in my organization, because it's very broad and their definition won't line up with my definition. And it's really hard to tell when you've accomplished it. So the framework for taking that really broad goal is called scaling. So you take the broad goal and you scale it, and you think about a scale from 0 to 10, and you think most importantly about what's at that end spectrum at the 10. The first thing you need to do is take your goal and define it really clearly. Define what it looks like to be a 10 in your scale for, in my case, becoming a recognized name in my organization. And for me, the things I thought of were that people know me, my location, my teams, and my skills. In my promotion planning process, my leaders recognize my ability to have impact at the organizational level, and I get feedback about that. Leadership and folks on teams, especially not my team, know who I am, can approach me for questions or give me feedback, or can talk with me about concerns or their need for support. Also, my teams, folks on my team see promotions and get promotions, and folks on my teams get recognized for their deep technical expertise in my case, in services and in container runtime. And finally, that I myself grow as well, and that I get a title of senior manager above. And I think for me, it was really important within a manager role to recognize that my success, or that definition of 10, had to include components that my team can achieve, because so much of my job is about helping people accomplish what they want to accomplish. So once you've defined your 10, you need to decide where you already are on the scale so that you can move forward. So when I think about how far along I am to becoming a recognized leader in my organization, I think I'd put it maybe at a 3 for where I am right now. As a check measure, first thing you want to do before you get started on how to achieve the goal is to identify the things that you're already doing. And I've never heard of somebody having a goal and not being able to recognize things that they're already doing to that effect. So you want to challenge yourself to list at least 7 things, big or small, that you're already doing, to give yourself a sense of motivation and to make sure that you accurately diagnose where you are on the scale in relation to 0 and 10. So for me, I thought back and I was like, well, I did complete the leadership program. I'm very comfortable speaking up in trainings that we do as managers and networking from those trainings. I presented this exact presentation to our org and had reports and managers show up. I share the templates for this kind of workshop across the org for other managers to then use. I organized and facilitated the bonus process for our talent planning this year as a manager cohort. I'm comfortable weighing in on org-wide Slack channels with questions or comments in a way that I wasn't even a year ago. And I'm also addressing my mental and physical well-being in a way that will allow me to be ready for the next step and the opportunity that comes when it comes. From what you're already doing, you want to decide, well, thinking about all of that, am I at a 3 on the scale, or am I either not quite at a 3 or actually past a 3? And when I think about it, I think actually I'm closer than I gave myself credit for. And I would say that I'm at a 5. So once you've determined where you are on the scale, you want to figure out a plan for getting you to 10. And you want to do that one step at a time. So small chunks that are definitely achievable, and each one gets you one step closer to your final goal. So to do the one step at a time, apologies. You want to choose options and define options and pick an option. For me, the options that I came up with to try to get to 10 and to try to keep them discrete and achievable were things like practicing public speaking 4 times. And it should be a mix of within my company and to people in the community. I should reach out to a few leaders in the company for one-on-ones where I ask questions and find out more about their role. I interview for roles that present themselves in that higher leadership capacity, both inside and outside of the company. I work closely with my leadership on the scope and the allocations and the priorities of my teams. I advocate and recruit for an org level DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion group to address the concerns to our specific context within the company. And I coach my reports on their visibility and help amplify their ideas and efforts. So once I've defined a bunch of options to take a step toward getting to 10, I pick one and I focus on that. So I decided to pick practicing public speaking 4 times, both inside and outside of the company. And I wanted to do it by the 1st of July. And the next thing you need to do is work on that option and finish it off. And in my case, I have, with this very presentation, finished off the option of practicing public speaking and doing it inside and outside of the company. So thank you for helping me achieve my goal. After you've finished the first option, the thing you want to do is continue the cycle. Pick a new option, finish that option, go back to your options. And once you've completed all the options and you feel like you've gotten to 10, then you should stop on that goal and celebrate and reflect. And then you should consider creating a new goal through the same process. So you want to repeat through those options, complete them all, don't forget to celebrate, and then set another goal. I can't stress how much help and support has helped me continue moving forward with my goals, because I've recognized that people want you to succeed. Most people that you know are in your corner. I know that for me, sharing goals can feel scary. Sharing my panic zones can feel scary and vulnerable. But if you can find people that you trust and you can socialize your goals, then you will get help and you'll get support. People that you could look to might be your manager or a mentor or a sponsor or friends and family, or folks you just happen to meet in the community who are enthusiastic and want to see you succeed. So a quick recap of the process and then why I choose this process compared to others. The steps again that you go through are reflect on your past and how you've gotten to where you are. Imagine your future, both sort of near term and long distance. Define your current context in those zones of comfort, stretch, and panic. And then from there, create a goal combining your stretch zone and your ideas for your future. Scale that goal so that you know what it looks like to achieve a 10. Define options for what you can do to get to 10. And then in a cycle, pick options, finish them, and start again. And then create a new goal. So why I like this approach compared to others is that I'm good at coming up with ideas, but I'm bad at breaking them down. Also, I don't think that personal goals are business goals. They're not one and the same. In the sense, the way I mean that is I've been introduced to frameworks like SMART framework, GROW framework, OKRs. I think they're very useful, but I don't think they're super useful in creating and developing goals that you want to be committed to for your own personal growth. I think this framework lets you focus on metrics so that you don't have to focus on metrics, but you still get a sense of progress because you've broken things down and you get to take tiny steps and celebrate. Also, the definition of 10 gives me guardrails in both directions. It pushes me to make sure that 10 is ambitious enough, but also it helps me understand when I should stop, when to call it. You also get a bunch of mini goals for free. Each one of those options is actually a goal. And sometimes you'll need to take an option and break it down further. It's all a self-feeding process. So getting those mini goals is accomplishments in and of itself. And finally, it gives you a chance to regularly evaluate and reflect on how you're doing, whether you're still doing the right thing, whether your priorities or the ideas that you have changed, and being able to course correct along the way. So if I leave you with anything, it's that I think you should go forth and create some goals, or at least think about them. Think about them for you and your career. Think about sharing them with a network of people that you trust. Approach it in a way that's ongoing and iterative rather than a one-shot deal. And I've given you one or a couple of tools that work for me. They may not work for you. So find the right fit for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Winna. That was great. Very good. And we have a few questions in the chat, but I'd like to ask if anyone here in the meeting wants to unmute themselves and talk directly with Winna. If not, no problem. I can read your questions. Okay, so Winna, in the chat, we have a question about the boot camp that you did for software engineer. Can you share what the boot camp was?
Sure, yeah, I did General Assembly's web development immersive program in 2013.
Yeah. Do you have any, is it still available, or do you have any recommendations for more updated ones?
Yeah, it's definitely still available. The industry right now and the boot camp offerings are quite wide. So I encourage anybody to sort of look at the different things, the different approaches that boot camps take. I think General Assembly was a great fit for me at the time, but I've seen a lot of others that are really valuable emerging. Mm-hmm. And I see a question around explaining how I coped with my first job after joining the real company. I think, Fahad, does that mean the company I've been with the longest, or?
No. So after your boot camp, how
yes.
did you, because of his experience with the boot camp, but then going into proper software engineering company. To give you a context about this is that my brother, he was into on the finance side, he kind of struggled to get actually a job until actually started switching to IT. So he went down the data analyst route. So I'm kind of asking on his behalf as to how you can move to, move from a different aspect of IT into like software engineering, and what would you recommend for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think I didn't use this framework in 2013, but I think this framework could help, because when I reflect on my experience at boot camp and then finding jobs after, it was so much about networking and continuing to nurture relationships while also learning. So keeping an eye on where in the industry you want to go, but also learning and being public about your learning, committing to GitHub, pushing all the time, showing that you're keen and eager, and then talk to as many people as you can, whether it's within the context of, oh, you have a role that I'm interested in, or just you do a thing that one day I might do. So can you give me half an hour to have coffee? The only reason that I got a job at Pivotal and VMware, excuse me, is because at the end of the General Assembly course, somebody who spoke during the course was the head of the London office. And he invited us all to an evening to do pair programming and to talk about TDD, which I had never done. And I sat down with a senior engineer at the time, who's now the head of Pivotal Labs for London. And he paired with me, and it was like definitely the biggest aha moment in my career. And I asked him very frankly, I was like, Nick, this was super, super useful. Even in 2 hours, the progress that I made compared to the last 12 weeks is incredible. I want to do this for my job. What can I do? Can I keep in touch with you? And over time, I had 2 jobs initially, but I kept in touch. And I also kept in touch with loads of other companies that I just met through community events or through rocking up and asking somebody to help with things. And so I found that the tech industry in London to be very welcoming. And I think that if somebody joins events generally, especially events targeted at people trying to get into the industry, the people who come to help really want to be there. They have a genuine interest in helping the industry look different than it does. And so I've met a lot of people who have been super valuable for me in my career.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from Alex Winna. What is the difference between the framework that you just showed and the SMART framework?
That's a great question. It does sound a lot. I'm just reading more of the context here. So yeah, SMART asks you to be specific and to create a goal that's measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. Very, very similar. They're kind of different flavors of the same thing. For me, I just kept getting caught up on like, how can I measure this? I don't really know. And I think the reason that this resonated with me is that I didn't necessarily have to define how to measure it because it was built into the scale, right? Like I knew that I was at a 5 and I needed to get to a 10. So I could measure it as I ticked off each of the things that I was doing. It's not an exact science. And I guess I don't see it being imperative that it is an exact science, but I see them as complementary tools.
Cool. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Another question is from Chris. What is the name and where we can find more information about the framework that you just showed?
Yeah. So the frameworks, it's a couple of frameworks. I actually had a slide that I took out around my inspiration for the talk, but the three places I pulled from were the book Radical Candor. And that book talks a lot about the past, future, present framework for conversations and thinking about your career. I highly recommend it. Then the coaching workshop gave me the tools, but if you search online for the scaling tool, you'll see that it's applicable in many different contexts. Sometimes engineering teams will define a scale for a project that they want to do so that they know their progress along the way. And you can use the scaling tool for any type of goal that you have. And so the scaling tool and the context zones are sometimes called learning zones. So if you search, a lot of coaching websites will explain both of those. But one book that I was recommended that I find very interesting is a book called Coaching for Performance, which is by a person whose name I can't remember right now. But if you do a Google search, you'll probably find it. It's a classic book. It's been around for a while. And it talks a lot about how do you coach and how do you see progress.
So then it seems that is the Winna framework. You did a lot of research and you collected
Frankenstein, yes.
No, but it was great, as people were saying here. I also liked it a lot, especially in the end when you showed the summary, like, okay, what did you see? Because, it seems, it's not that it's simple, but it seems feasible, because when we started the presentation, I was thinking like, oh, wow, this is a project,
Yeah.
How do you first start? How do you even start? How do you manage all of this at the same time that you are words about to accomplish things? It seems a lot, but then the more you explain, and then in the end, when it shows the summary, I think it's more, as everything in life, I think that's more difficult to get started.
Yes, definitely.
Right?
Definitely. And I think if you can break it down, then getting started doesn't feel so intimidating. And I think the other important thing is once you've chosen the options that you want to do, try not to focus on the bigger goal. Try to celebrate the wins of doing each option, because again, to avoid reflecting on how much you haven't done or how much you have left to do doesn't really help you in the moment achieve the thing that you're working on.
Winna, and can you tell me how, for example, if I want to create this project, this framework for me now, how did you, in your experience, how did you do? Did you sit one day and then you went through all of this, or it took you a few days sometime? How did you do it?
That's a good question. I think it's a bit hard for me to know, because since I was facilitating it before I did it on myself, I kind of been thinking about these things for a while. But with my reports, generally, when I first meet them, like my first few sessions will be about tell me your life story up to this point. It's lots of questions and it's a lot of fun. And then after that, we have another session, which is an hour plus, where we talk about the future and industries and roles and things you know you don't want to do and you do want to do. And then we get into, all right, well, now that you're here in this role on this team, what do you want to do in your context to grow and to grow as a business as well? So all told, it can take, a number of hours, but I don't do it as one sort of half day thing. I spread it out, because I think the reflection is very different from actually defining the things you want to work on right now.
Okay. And since we don't have more questions in the chat, I still have more questions.
Yeah.
How do you follow, once you can create, at least for starts, how do you follow up, if you are the frequency, from how much time you revisit your plans and you check if you are achieving your goals. Maybe something happens and you discover that it can happen that you plan something and in the middle of the way you're like, oh, that's not what I wanted. And then what you do, you change everything.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a great question. And with my reports, I've seen this a lot. So in a business context within the company, we've defined 2 or 3 high level goals, or even just one, and it hinges on what the team is meant to be executing on right now. And we think that execution plan will last for 6 months. So we define the options and everything about it. And then 2 months in, we're told and we understand through strategic decisions that we need to shift or change tack. So really, in that point, if a goal is irrelevant, then you can stop and you can celebrate what you've done so far and you can reflect on the benefit of that work. But it's not really worthwhile to get too down about the fact that you're changing direction. And hopefully whatever you've been doing will still be useful in a new context, which 99% of the time has been the case for the goals that my reports come up with. And in terms of frequency, for other people as their sort of advocate and support, we have a recurring 5 or 6 week check-in, which is explicitly about goals, progress, and accomplishments. So asking people to write down their accomplishments so that they know the next time a promotion review comes around, and reflecting on the goals and what the progress has been so far.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Any other questions? As you said, it's a pretty simple tool, so I figured just sharing it would be interesting enough for people.
Yeah. Did you share? I don't remember. Did you share your contact at the end of the presentation in case people can contact you?
Yes.
Maybe
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm on
great.
LinkedIn for sure.
Okay, great. Yeah, I don't see any more questions here in the chat. I don't see any raised hands. Winna, would you like to add anything else?
No, I think I'm good. So give people 14 minutes back to their day to get
Yeah.
on with things.
Yeah, to think about, process everything that you said. It's a lot, but it's pretty exciting.
Hopefully, yes, hopefully. Definitely.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, so I think that's a wrap. Thank you very much, Winna.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks everybody for coming, and thanks for hosting and bringing everybody together.
My pleasure.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Andrea.
Okay,
Take care.
everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.